Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Austin, what are we going to call this? An emergency episode,
Yeah, special
breaking
edition.
news episode,
Breaking news, yeah.
breaking news episode.
Special edition.
Yeah, bonus content was what we did just the other night, and it's
hmm
just keep it rolling, man. So, what's the big
Right.
news that we got today? Why are we here today, Austin?
Well, the big news obviously is today is my birthday. So,
Yes.
that's the first piece of big news we need to get out of
Happy
the way.
birthday, by the
So,
way. I've told you a million times today, but
I
I'll say
know.
it on here just so
Yep.
people don't think that I hate you.
So yeah, I am working on my birthday, but that's by choice. Giannis Antetokounmpo signed his 5-year, $228 million extension with the Milwaukee Bucks today. He actually didn't let anyone get the scoop, which is kind of unheard of. He actually announced it himself on Twitter, saying, "This is my home. This is my city. I'm blessed to be able to be a part of the Milwaukee Bucks for the next 5 years. Let's make these years count. The show goes on. Let's get it." So pretty excited about that. It's a big story. What do you think about that, Steven?
It's huge, and I would just want to point out, that he broke the news, but eventually, the dog that Adrian Wojnarowski is, as far as getting a hold of information, especially when it's withheld from him. Basically, I'm going to be paraphrasing and summarizing a little bit, but basically, when I was watching his interview that he gave, basically the feeling is that Giannis is like, I'm okay with what they did this offseason. I'm okay with the pieces that they added. They got Drew Holiday. They kind of mortgaged the future to bring in an immediate contributor. We both kind of felt that maybe he should wait it out, especially when he really wanted, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and they botched that trade, right?
Yeah.
And he's no longer there. Just so people who kind of feel on our side of the fence, right, that just because he signed this extension doesn't mean that he's going to be there for 5 years, right? Like, it's
Right.
also worth pointing out that fifth year has a player option attached to it. So he's truly only guaranteed 4 years. He could come back for a fifth if he so choose. But if they want to, work out a deal where they can trade him to get something in return, they now have to wait 6 months. With the way that the trade deadline breaks out, he can't be traded at all this season, right? So, like,
Right.
that's going to kind of affect the storytelling of him in Milwaukee this season. I think that it's going to be kind of played to that. Look at the loyalty that he showed Milwaukee. Look at the loyalty that they showed him. I think that that's going to be kind of the narrative that gets played a lot this season.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is obviously good for the Milwaukee Bucks. It takes a level of pressure off of the franchise, now. Maybe, I don't think so, but maybe makes Coach Budenholzer's seat a little less hot. I still think he's on the hot seat. I think, they need to show an improvement from last year. But, this kind of tells me two things. Giannis is betting on himself. He thinks, everybody's saying, why would you re-sign in Milwaukee? Well, he from his perspective, it might be, why wouldn't I? This is where I want to be, and I'm the reason we're going to win. He doesn't maybe think the same way we all do, like, oh, who does he need to team up with? He's probably thinking, because of me, that gives us the best chance to win wherever I'm at. So I want to be here. So I think that's a plus for, kind of everybody around the organization. I do still think Coach Budenholzer is on the hot seat. I don't know what you think about that, but that's definitely one storyline that I'll be watching throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, I just want to address real quick, and I'm sorry, I'm taking notes here just so I can capture, some of the thoughts that you put out. Before I answer the hot seat question, you brought up the why wouldn't I? And again, we have our Twitter group chat that we talk about here famously here on our show and on other shows as well. We talked about this at great length between a few of our fellow colleagues. And, if Giannis stays and if Milwaukee does not trade him, like, we're talking about less than 1% of any other situation that has similarly happened in the NBA, right? Where both sides mean what they say and they mean it long term. Like, now it's to where, like, oh, when I said it then, like, I meant it then, and why am I not allowed to change a situation and circumstances around me change and stuff like that, right? So they have these built-in excuses and escape routes that they can use whenever they or the team decide to part ways, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he does stay, it would be less than 1% on his part and the organization's part for the contract's full length, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, why wouldn't he stay? Well, probably the fact that like we still don't know what COVID's going to do to professional sports, and the fact that he can secure a 5-year, $228 million contract might have a little bit to do with why he signed as well. You know, I hate to be a little bit, cynical to that aspect, right? Like, it's getting harder and harder to believe like the loyalty part in sports in general, but particularly the NBA. It's just getting really hard to buy the loyalty aspect of it, right? Like, people say, we'll look at Dirk and look at Kobe. Kobe asked for a trade. You know what I mean? Like, really the only player that stayed and has been happy the whole time has been Dirk. When was he drafted? You know what I mean?
Maybe Tim Duncan too.
Maybe, oh, of course, Tim Duncan. Thank you. But still, like, we're talking like in the late 90s, these players are drafted. Like, these guys have been drafted like 20 years after that, and the league is completely different in that aspect, right? So
it's changed a lot.
It's changed a lot, right? And it's to nobody's fault, really. I don't blame players. I don't blame organizations. It's just that as fans, we need to kind of grow past this like loyalty narrative. If they stay loyal, that's great. But like, it's hard to take players' words at face value in the NBA anymore, right? So
for sure.
To your point on Bud's hot seat, also on our, Twitter chat, I think that like they at least have to make the the Eastern Conference Finals for him to like be able to be guaranteed. And like, that's lowballing it. Another colleague of ours who we've had on the show, Jerg, says it's basically finals or bust. I don't know how you feel about that. I let them get 1 year with the new group, because it's not that they just brought in Drew Holiday, but they also brought in guys like Bobby Portis, DJ Augustine, players like that. So it's a new system essentially. And, they're without two of the point guards that we've mentioned previously on the show. They don't have any draft picks. So it's kind of like a prove it season to me with Giannis. He could still ask to be out, right? So, and again, I'll mention that he and Bam Adebayo have a shared agent. So like, maybe it's to the point now to where it's like, oh yeah, both of you guys grab your bag and we'll figure this out next season. You know what I mean?
There it goes. Yeah, definitely. Sorry, you kind of cut out there for a minute, so I missed the last part of what you were saying.
Oh, I was just saying, did you hear? Yeah, you kind of cut out on me as well, but did you hear the part where like Giannis and Bam kind of share an agent, right? So if he could have advised both of them, like, yeah, both of you guys grab your bag and we'll figure this out later, right?
Yeah, I could see that happening possibly. I just feel like the positives for Giannis in Milwaukee, there's just so many of them. For one, there's 228 million new reasons for him to stay there, first and foremost.
That could travel with them, though. That
I meant sign this contract. Sign this contract. If he does take that 5th year option, he's going to be making almost $52 million in the 25-26 season. He's set his family up for generations now financially. He's in a place where he knows people absolutely love him. He's going to be the star. Everybody wants to, is going to want to see him, going to want to see him play. You don't hardly ever hear a bad thing said about the guy in his own, community there in Milwaukee. So, I think this opens him up for the opportunity, if he can get them over the hump and get them to a title in the next 5 years, or maybe he needs to win multiple, at least one. I think he could make the case for being one of if not the greatest Milwaukee Bucks ever when this contract's all said and done, if he can get them there. And nothing that he's done yet should really dissuade anybody from thinking that he can, because you and I just talked about this. Like, Michael Jordan was in year 9. LeBron was in year 7 or 8. When he went to Milwaukee, I think year 9. Right around the same time. So that's what year Giannis is going into now. So he's 26. He's in his prime. He's gonna be there. At least, like we said, he has to be there for at least a year. I don't see, now that he signed this. And when he signed it, it's weird timing, is a big part of it for me. So it makes me feel like he really was conflicted about whether or not he wanted to. And something made him decide, okay, I want to stay. Let's do this. Let's sign it. Because either he wouldn't have signed it now if he was confident he was going to sign it all along. He would have either signed it right at the beginning or right at the end of this deadline.
I mean, maybe, and technically he still hasn't even signed it yet. Like this is just reported that he's going, like that it's going to be happening. Mm-hmm. And it also, to some of the things that you just brought up, he waited until after a preseason loss to the Dallas Mavericks. Like what motivate, like it is a little bit curious on the timing in which that this was done, right? Like they lost a preseason game to Dallas, and then he's like, okay, like I'm confident in what I've seen in this loss in preseason to extend long term here. And again, I keep bringing up that shared agent, between he and Bam. On the other side of this, Miami has looked pretty good in preseason, right? So like it's kind of one of those things where it is pretty curious. I want to bring up a kind of a counterpoint to something you mentioned earlier that we did also bring up on, a prior show. You mentioned, comparing Giannis to MJ and LeBron on their timetable, right? And he's entering that same type of stage in his career where he could go on. But what else did we bring up that, Giannis needs in order to be able to do that, right? Like we mentioned that Robin and Batman aspect, right? And, is he more likely going to be able to win as a Batman or a Robin? And we said that we don't look at him in that light to where he's like a de facto number 2, but more of like a 1B, kind of like what Anthony Davis is to a LeBron James. It is really difficult for a paint-oriented scorer to carry a team to a championship, especially in today's NBA, right? Like you have to have that perimeter guy. Like is Drew Holiday that guy? Which, by the way, a lot of what's going to happen in Milwaukee has to not only do with making Giannis happy now, but also Drew Holiday, because Drew Holiday has, a way out as well after this season. And they did mortgage a lot of their future, if not all of it, in order to bring in Drew Holiday to appease Giannis. Now they have to shift their attention, right, to we have to make Drew Holiday happy in order to make this work, right, because he can't get traded. And we just got a comment here. I'll read it real quick. Buddy Michael Scott, not from The Office, but Michael Scott says the extension is buying the team and Giannis time to pursue another marquee player in pursuit of winning an NBA championship. When the contract is finished, he'll still be able to test the market at 31, ultimately cashing in again in the future if his team no longer remains in Milwaukee. He also says that the move shows the loyalty still exists in modern professional sports. Again, like we're in our feelings right now, Michael. I don't necessarily agree that just because he got the bag doesn't mean that he is gonna stay. You know what I mean? Like, and again, based on the COVID circumstances, like this could be like, all right, let's grab the bag and we'll figure it out later, right? But I do like the point that he brought up that even if he does write out this contract at 31, it's still pretty young to do something in the NBA, right?
Very definitely. There's still in what would be considered his physical prime. I mean, that's just on a normal curve. If he starts taking care of his body the way LeBron does, 31, he could have a lot of time left. It remains to be seen. He is a physical freak. He is a absolute specimen in that aspect. So
his game would have to change a little bit. You would like to think, right? Like when he starts entering his 30s.
Right. He's gonna have to develop more of an outside game, but I think this signing signifies to me that he thinks that he can be that Batman, and that he may think having Middleton and Drew Holiday are enough perimeter, threat, and that he can carry them over the hump. And I think he's gotten, significantly better every season so far. So there's no reason to think that he won't continue. Just because he's already the best at so many things doesn't mean he can't like expand on that and get even better. And it doesn't mean that he's got a good shot. He's got a good shot mechanics, I think. I think he just needs to work on it. And
he's in his 30s on 3 for the first time, right? Yeah. Like he's extended his range a little bit.
And I mean, he's going to get you around 30 points and 13 or 14 rebounds. He's going to guard the best player on the other team.
If the coach tells him, right? Like he didn't do that in the playoffs.
Coach tells him. But he's going to be one of the elite defenders in the NBA. He does everything well. Other than maybe that perimeter game, but I think this, like I said, I think this signifies to me at least that he thinks that he's good enough to get Milwaukee over the hump with what they have now and get them to a championship. Maybe not this year. I don't know that anybody thinks that anybody's really going to compete with the Lakers too much at this point. But a 5-year contract, a year or two down the road, he may, like your friend said, he may be thinking, that gives us time to find somebody else or develop somebody else, or him to improve his game to another level to where, maybe next year, or the year after, they could win a title. And this gives them time. This makes me feel like if they went through the whole season not knowing if Giannis was staying or not, it was title or bust for sure. And I think this takes that away from that to an extent. I think if they improve, if they go to the Eastern Conference Finals, if they're competitive in a series like that, if they don't, blow a big lead or something like that, early in the playoffs like they've done before, I think that's good enough for year one. Because ultimately with this longer contract, I think they have a bigger window now to try to win.
Well, my thing is like we're talking about now we're discussing the thought process is like, they'll just bring in somebody. Who do they bring in, Austin? Because now that Giannis is guaranteed 5-year, $228 million, he's one of, if not the largest contracts in the entire NBA right now. The largest, right? Thank you.
Yep.
So they also have Chris Middleton making, I'm calling it up right now. This season he'll be making over 33 million. The following season is 35 and a half.
That's
the year
crazy.
after that is just a hair under 40,000. And then at age 32 has a player option for 40 million, which I think he would be foolish to not take. If I were I would take that money. And then they still have to figure out what they do with Drew Holiday. So if you have a big three of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton in the Eastern Conference right now that has Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, you have, the Philadelphia 76ers are largely in pursuit of James Harden, but even still, they have Doc Rivers as a head coach, and they have, Simmons and Embiid. The Hawks are a budding team. The Celtics are a budding team. Toronto is going to have free agency money to be able to chase, somebody, if not trade for Giannis in the 2021 offseason. And they still have a lot of young pieces. The East is waiting for no one right now to kind of just come and take the throne, right? So if you have Giannis and you have Chris and you have Drew, is that good enough for them to get a title? Because that's what I think Giannis is wanting now, because he's literally done everything else already in his young career. Like, only thing left for him now is to be an NBA champion. And I think that this year, since he can't be traded, we already discussed why he has to wait now, because the extension is larger than 3 years. He has to wait 6 months in this shortened season and the trade deadline approaching in only 3 months. He is not going to be traded this season. So you got what you got right now. And unless you hit the buyout market and get someone on a vet minimum, is this enough? And if you can't win a championship a la AD in New Orleans, or sometimes not even make the playoffs, right? Is this good enough to keep Giannis happy and get a ring in Milwaukee?
I think he thinks it is.
What do you think?
I think it could be. If he makes the kind of jump that he's made the last few years and gets even better this year, he could be the missing piece. He just may not be to his final form, so to speak, yet. And, when he gets to that point, that may be good enough with Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. I'm a little bit higher on Chris Middleton than most people. I like his shooting ability. I think he needs to run the offense a little more. I think hopefully Holiday will run the offense a little bit more. And Giannis,
he did average like 7 assists last season. So he did show his ability to play point again, which he started out with right in Philadelphia when he was a young pup.
Definitely. So I just think anything to kind of bring down Giannis's usage rate a little bit and up his efficiency, getting him the ball in spots to score rather than having him take it off the rim and go all the way by himself. or bring it up off of an out of bounds play and run the offense basically as a point forward. I just don't see that as the best use for him. So, I think a lot of what happens with this team is going to revolve around Coach Bud's ability to kind of evolve as a coach and maybe show some willingness to try some different things than what he's done in the past, because whatever he does seems to work in the regular season. And then come playoff time, when coaches have 4 or 5, 6, 7 games in a row against him, they seem to figure it out. So he's got to show growth as a coach, as much as Giannis needs to show growth as a player, as much
probably
as
more, right?
Needs to show growth. Yeah, probably even more so. But ultimately they need, an improvement at kind of every level a little bit here to take that next step. And we've talked about this plenty of times before. There's that old narrative that every championship team has to get over some kind of hurdle first, whether or not it's the Pistons or the Celtics, or it's,
for Michael Jordan, right? Not this season.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, LeBron having to, figure out how to be, basically how to coexist with Dwayne Wade and win in Miami. Once he kind of figured that out, it was no stopping him, but there was like a learning curve there. There's like a thing that everybody kind of has to go through. And we may be in the middle of that right now, and everybody's just so impatient nowadays that they think he should have won by now. And I don't know. He's young. He's just 26 years old. He's kind of coming into what should be the start of his physical prime in his NBA career. Like, it just seems like some guys are expected so much of so young, and we don't think about any kind of like historical evidence that shows like this is about the now when he should start winning. And I think there's something to be said about that. So ultimately, I think that, he thinks at least that, and a lot, and rightfully so, because he is unbelievably good, that he's good enough to lead them to a title.
We both did have him. We finished our tiers 2 nights ago, wasn't it, or somewhere close to that? I don't know. The days are kind of running together on me, but
I think
roughly 2 nights ago, we did our NBA player tiers, and we both had him in our MVP category, right? So, that, or tier 2. Yep. Excuse me, tier 2 in our MVP category. And I mean, he's right there. If there's anybody in the NBA better than him, it may be, only 4 or 5 other players. And then our buddy Lee Branscombe of hoopsprospects.com, who's a great friend of the show and of the network, said midday content. Let's go.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Lee.
Thanks for checking in, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And just if you're coming in, we're just breaking down the Giannis trade, or excuse me, extension. I keep saying trade. I hate that I keep saying trade. I know it's an extension, but and you bring up a good point. Is he already done progressing? I mean, it's also kind of hard to believe that he can progress more based off of what we've seen. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, the young guy does develop, kind of that grandpa game, where they can go inside and they have an easy go-to move that they can just finish with of ease. He doesn't really have that. His go-to move is, I'm 7 feet tall and I am incredibly athletic. I'm
going to run by you and dunk it over you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to take the James Harden route and say that doesn't require any skill at all, because I can't remember ever seeing anybody do this. So
right.
Obviously there is a level of skill at this, but and he's also incredibly valuable on the defensive end, which you just alluded to earlier. So I mean, it's hard to believe. Like, what is the next step though, Austin? You keep saying I can't imagine that he can't take that next step. What's the next step, Austin?
Developing a little more of a outside game, working on his shot a little bit. I think a big part of it is just going to come from, hopefully, Coach Budenholzer realizes he needs to play more than 31 minutes a night. I mean, we used to see guys, play 38, 40, 42 minutes every night. Allen Iverson hardly ever averaged under 40 minutes a game for his career. And that was like the norm. That was like what everybody did just 10, 12 years ago. And a lot of guys do it now. I mean, LeBron plays significantly more minutes than that in year 17. And you can't tell me Giannis wouldn't keep up the same level of efficiency with 6 or 7 more minutes a game, because I think he very well would. I think we could see a guy average 36 and 15 if he was out there long enough.
Yeah, and 2 and 2, blocks
Mhm.
and steals, and probably,
Right.
5 to 7 assists somewhere in that window.
And, that extra 6 or 7 minutes that he's out there a night kind of takes away the need for somebody else to really, hold things down or, try to build on that lead because he's going to be out there most of the time. And you can't tell me in today's age that he wouldn't be able to recover and be okay to do that on a nightly basis because we see guys do it all the time. So that's something that I'd like to see in terms of a progression is him say, maybe go to the coach and say, why are you taking me out? Like, I need to play. I need to be in here, and take it upon himself to guard the best guy on the other team. And, if he thinks he's this guy that's going to win a title, with the help that he has and not being somebody's help, like a lot of people think he is, that's the kind of things he's going to have to do. He's going to have to improve his outside game, and he's going to have to, figure out a way to be out there as much as he can and affect the game every way that he can. And, he's already good at it. I just think he needs to kind of demand that more a little bit.
Yeah. And, that's a subject that was brought up in the bubble. We alluded to it here earlier on the show where he said that you said that he was going to guard the best guy available. And I made the comment, well, if the coach tells him to, right? Like, so now how much pressure, Austin, does this contract add to not just Milwaukee, because everyone I think has appropriately placed the emphasis on Milwaukee making the right decisions to keep Giannis happy. Mm-hmm. Now that Giannis has looked around, he's assessed the situation that's around him. He's looked at the guys that are going to be on his team and say, yep, I'm going to secure this bag. I'm going to make 5 years, $228 million, highest contract in the NBA. That means a lot to the players, right? Like maybe fans don't really necessarily look at the amount of money that he makes compared to the other greats in the game around him. Now the other players in the game are looking at him like, okay, this is the guy that makes more money than I do. I'm going to embarrass him on the court now. So how much pressure is on Giannis to make Milwaukee that title contender, that title favorite? How much pressure is on him?
Well, I think the immediate pressure is taken off of him and everybody right now, right away. Like the pressure for that to happen, this year or bust, like we were talking about. But I think ultimately it does overall, it adds quite a bit of pressure to Giannis for sure. He's got to improve. He's got to be the guy now. Like there's not a way to bring in another superstar of his caliber or even close. There's outside of trading Jrue Holiday, which you're not going to get equal value for necessarily.
And you can't yet, right? Because he's just signed
for a while. I mean, yeah. I'm talking just even down the road. No,
I got you.
They're kind of set into the roster that they have, so to speak. They could hit another diamond in the rough in the draft like they did with him, but what are the chances of that? So, I think he's betting on this being the core of this being good enough to win. And he's going to be the one that determines that. It's not going to be, they're bringing in somebody or he's not going to go join with somebody else. He's putting it on himself. So I think it adds a ton of pressure in terms of by the length of this contract to get them to, they need to go to the finals a couple times. If they don't win, they need to go to the finals 2 or 3 times, for it to really, for him to be that guy, because he's shown the individual skill. Obviously he's won 2 MVPs. He's, like you just said, just the historical aspect of this contract. I mean, before this contract, the highest overall total value was Russell Westbrook at $206 million. So he's making $22 million more than the next highest contract. So he blew it away.
Well, and also you point to the fact that, Russell Westbrook signed that contract. And now that, a lot of people share this, this mindset that Giannis may stay in Milwaukee now. You just brought up Russell Westbrook. What number team is he on now? He's on his 3rd team now, right?
Sure.
In Washington. So he never lived to see the end of that contract in the place that he signed. And I was like, okay, Russell Westbrook's a different cat. Like he is completely different from most other players. He's eccentric like a lot of other guys, but he's also like driven and motivated and has like only one speed that he operates at, right?
Kill himself to get a win.
Exactly. And now he's on his 3rd team. So when I look at the way that people are holding up Giannis, right? Because you know he's different, right?
Right.
In Milwaukee signed him, and everybody is speaking on loyalty right now. You know, loyalty is kind of the buzzword surrounding this deal right at this moment. I just look at guys like Russell Westbrook, who said the same thing, you know, said that, you know, Kevin Durant was soft and, you know, was, you know, all these other things, right? Because he went to Golden State and left him and like, okay, I'm going to do this for my city and I'll show you Kevin Durant. Now they're shaking hands on the sideline in a preseason game between the Nets and the Wizards, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
It's, you know, you make a good point. I just think with Russell Westbrook, we had plenty of time to see what the ceiling was with him, you know, in terms of how far they could go. And I don't know that we're there yet with Giannis. I don't know if that we know quite what his ceiling is yet. Russell Westbrook, the very, very best of Russell Westbrook with once Kevin Durant left and before, even really when Paul George was there. I mean, they had a good team when Paul George was there, but they didn't really succeed in the playoffs like you would have expected them to.
Correct.
You know, they kind of saw with Russell Westbrook, this is as good as we're going to get. That's where I think the difference is. I don't think they know quite exactly yet what Giannis's ceiling is. I don't know if anyone.
But I bet they were pretty confident when they signed him to that deal that he was going to do these things that, you know, maybe you're kind of pointing at Giannis with doing, right? It's hard when you're already like a triple double. Like, what else did Russell Westbrook have to do to improve his game when he's averaged triple double year after year after year? Like, at some point, you're just as good as you're gonna be, right? Like, that's kind of like where I'm at with Giannis right now. Like, at some point, you can't like. Yes, you can grow like mentally, you can grow like, you know, in how you break down the game and stuff like that. But like your overall talent level at some point is tapped out and it's okay.
Yeah. And that may be the case and you may be right. And he may be this may be the story of a failed superstar that, you know, doesn't ever quite get his small market team over the hump. And then when he's 30 or 31, he opts out of this contract and goes on his way somewhere else, signs another huge deal somewhere.
Kevin Garnett
teams up with somebody then. And, you know, because then he could still have, you know, an entire, you know, 4 or 5 year contract worth of top level skill left. And then I think he's so young and so good that the options are endless at this point. You know, I think if people want to be naive enough to talk about loyalty, like it still is a real thing. The loyalty is from the team to him, but not, I don't see this as any kind of signification of loyalty the other way. I think it's him taking the best deal that he could get and being comfortable where he's at, but not necessarily, you know, saying, oh, I'm going to stay here in Milwaukee no matter what, because it's Milwaukee. Like, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think there's $228 million and a chance to, in 2 years, really, to force his way out if he wants to, you know? So I think he's in the best position he could possibly be in by signing this contract. There was really nothing to gain on his part by not signing it, I don't think.
And
1 or 2 years of freedom, 1 or 2 years of freedom if you wanted to go somewhere else a little bit sooner. But like you said, you know, we're seeing it right now with James Harden. We just saw it with Paul George, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, guys forcing their way out, you know, and he could do it anytime. Anthony Davis. I mean, all these guys just did that. So it's great for the player. It's great in terms of the organization showing him loyalty. But all this says to me is he got the best deal that he could get. It has nothing to do with loyalty to Milwaukee.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's Milwaukee's other choice? You know what I mean? Like, is it loyalty so much of the fact that like this is just something that they have to do? Like, yeah, what's the alternative? Let him leave for
there
nothing?
Isn't an alternative. It's almost the same argument as when people get mad about Kevin Durant going to the Warriors. Like, if you're the Warriors, you can't not pursue that if you've got that much cap space and the ability to get him. You can't not go after him. Like, if I was a fan of my team and they had the cap space and it was a rumored interest that one of the best 2 or 3 players in the world wanted to come to my team, no matter how good we were, I would explore it. I would be upset if they didn't.
Yeah, I might mull it over a little bit and see.
You know, like you said, Milwaukee has no other option. Because what are they going to do? Have a team with no draft picks and Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton?
and let Drew Holiday walk and Giannis at the same time, and then give the keys to Chris Middleton to be their number one guy with no money and no draft picks.
No money and no draft picks.
This is something that. Do they like Giannis? Absolutely. I'm not saying that they don't like him and like they're just kind of like, yeah, it's not a hostage negotiation where like, all right, you guys are going to keep me now. Like it, both things can exist at the same time. Like, yeah, they love Giannis, but like, what's their, like, if you say like, oh, they're so loyal to Giannis, like what's their alternative? You know what I mean? Like this is something that has to be done on one side. Like, I don't know how much of it is loyalty. I'm not saying it's not at all loyalty, but like there's also the argument you can make that like this is just something that has to be done. Like this is the way the NBA goes. You do these things because that's just the way things are done, right?
Mm-hmm. So I have a question for you. What does it change if, say, Milwaukee goes after and pursues a James Harden trade and somehow is able to get him?
I think that changes things a lot because, well, they would have to squash the beef, and we've seen NBA players do that. NBA players do squash beef, as quickly as they can start it. I think that, they can get past that. I think that James Harden is the type of player, though. I'm not saying that it would happen, but a player of his type, his magnitude at the position that he plays, I think is enough to where you look at Milwaukee, and if you're Giannis, you're like, okay, I believe that we have everything that we need right now to win an NBA championship. And my buddy Michael says, why do we want to believe that Giannis will eventually want to move on? He wants to be a one-team player and wants to win in Milwaukee. Michael Scott, are you willing to – I'm sorry, I just real quick and I'll turn over to you. Michael Scott, are you willing to bet everything that you own on this that he stays in Milwaukee his whole career?
Ooh.
I mean – and I'm not trying to put you on blast. I'm asking, like, this is how I evaluate things. Like, and not only that, but look at just the way that the NBA progresses. Like, are you willing to bet that right now Giannis Antetokounmpo is the 1% different guy that is willing to do everything differently than everybody else? And that after this feel-good moment right now where he signs, are you willing to bet everything that he stays in Milwaukee right now? I'm sure as heck not. That's just not the way the NBA is done anymore.
It's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and he says that I think it's more likely that Harden arrives in Milwaukee to play Giannis and a Holiday in exchange for Middleton. And like that would be like, Michael, this is the type of move that I think that it takes in order to keep a Giannis. And you say, I think that he goes there 4 more years, and if he doesn't win by then he's out. Well, then where's the loyalty if that happens too? Like, where's the loyalty for that? You know what I mean? Like that's not loyalty either,
And to answer your question, the reason that we want to think Giannis is going to move on or going to leave is because it's more fun to talk about. We can't really come up with 14 different storylines about him staying with Milwaukee. I want to think about what it would be like if he went to Golden State or if he went to Dallas or Toronto, just because it's fun to think about it. And it's easier to talk about than, all the reasons why he should stay. Hey, thank you very much.
You got a happy birthday wish.
I got a happy birthday wish. Working on my birthday.
Excellent
stuff. This is the furthest thing from work. That's for sure.
This is fun, man. But yeah, and just real quick, like what you just said, like it is fun, but like that's not like the only, like I'll speak for myself. Like that's not why I bring it up. Like it's just the one thing that you can take away from history, it says that it repeats itself over and over. Like, do I think that it's better? Do I think that it's better for Giannis to stay in Milwaukee? I would love to see that happen. It's not that I'm advocating him for, like, I don't have a favorite team in the NBA and if I did, like Giannis is, the amount of cap and, there's so much fit stuff that goes along when you bring in a star with a star. Like, it's not that I'm advocating him that I want him to leave Milwaukee. It's just that when I look at the way that the NBA is done now, it's hard for me to believe, based off of the history of events that have happened, that he is willing to stay there. And he just wrote back. He said, you guys are right that loyalty does in somewhere. And I remember when, LeBron finally gave up in Cleveland his first time, right? And we've seen Milwaukee's front office botch Malcolm Brogdon. We've seen them botch Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like they have no more draft picks. At some point, Giannis will probably look around and say, I've done everything that I can for this organization. Like, I really feel like I've put my best effort and energy into this team, and it hasn't really gotten me much.
Well, he's already been there for quite a while. We got to think about that too. He's given him a good amount of time already. He's, at least signed on the dotted line or going to for up to 5 more years, at least 4. As long as both parties are happy, he's going to be there for at least 4 more years. And I just think, one of the big things that we're kind of overlooking is just the historical significance of this contract and just where he's come from in terms of not even just in childhood, like where he came from in terms of where he was drafted. I mean, how many guys do you hear about that end up this good from where he came from? A skinny kid from Greece that nobody knew a whole lot about that just got bigger and bigger and better every year and still is, and is kind of taking the NBA by storm in a way. And the fact that he's got a contract that's going to pay him an average of over $45 million a season for the next 5 years just blows me away. Just the thought of that kind of money and that commitment from a team. Obviously they want him there as long as he wants to be there. That's got to be a nice feeling. That's got to be, nice knowing that a place you kind of grew up in Milwaukee, is a place where you're going to be at least till you're 30 years old if you want to be, and a place where you're comfortable and a place where you feel you can win. And all of this goes away if he is that dude and they win a title, and then we start talking about him possibly racking up more and more accolades and getting on that list of the best of all time at some point.
And then more players come to Milwaukee and want to play for him, and it makes it easier for him to want to stay and finish his career there, right? So
exactly. And he may be the rare superstar nowadays that's Kobe Bryant that wants to, or that's Dirk Nowitzki or that's Tim Duncan. It's not that long ago that those guys just finished their careers. So it's not that crazy to think that somebody could be like that still or want to play his whole career for one organization. That's awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Michael just wrote for anyone who can't see. He said, "You guys are doing great. I'm really going to start listening more often. I like the insight and its depth." Michael, really appreciate that. Appreciate you just coming in and talking with us.
Definitely. We love it.
Yeah, we love it a lot, and we appreciate anybody that takes the time out of their day to listen to us talk about what we know of the game of basketball. And Austin, just to your point about Kobe and Dirk, how often does that happen? It's easier, right? And look at the tea leaves, as our buddy Couch Coach Live likes to say. Masai Ujiri paid for his family to come to the United States when he was drafted. Mm-hmm. He's on a different organization. He has a shared agent with Bam Adebayo. Mm-hmm. He and Steph Curry are always super friendly on the court and cover their mouths with their jerseys whenever they talk to each other. So these are things that it's easy to point to media and say, y'all are just reading too much into something. But these types of things happen when players do leave teams and do go to other organizations. I mean, look at Anthony Davis and LeBron James covering their mouth with their jerseys when they talk, right? It happens all the time. And it's not people just reaching, and it's really only a fan of the team or a fan of the loyalty idea of sports that say, oh, you guys are just reaching. This happens all the time.
One thing that I'm kind of sad about is with everybody having to wear masks, we're never going to know who's having a secret conversation and who's just talking about dinner next week. We're never going to know when LeBron's covering his face. They're all going to be secret conversations now.
Yeah. Everyone is getting traded and signing elsewhere, and everyone is going to want out of wherever it is that they're playing now. Cause that's a good point.
Right, but another thing that people bring up a lot of times too is the fact that Giannis didn't grow up in this AAU circuit in the United States. He didn't grow up in a AAU style where all these guys know each other and all these guys are friends and they want to play together. And they
kind of did. How old was he when he was drafted by the Bucks?
He was pretty young. He was 17 or 18 years old, I think.
Yeah, he was drafted in 2013. So I mean, he's been indoctrinated into U.S. culture for the past, 7-8 years. So I mean,
right, but I mean, guys like John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins have been playing together since grade school.
I understand what you mean. Yeah,
and a lot of these guys are like that. They develop these friendships that he just didn't really, grow up with. At least he grew up with his brothers and in Greece, and then he came over here pretty young, but he missed out on the whole AAU thing. He came right into the NBA.
And maybe that's why Dirk stayed in Dallas, because he didn't. I mean, not that he was drafted in an era where the AAU thing was a thing, but like it's different cultures, different style of play, and cultural differences between countries probably played a large part in that too, right?
That's a good point, definitely. And is it too crazy to believe that guys just like the situation that they have? Like they're just comfortable where they are, their family's comfortable where they are, they want to stay there. And by the way, you can make the most money here too.
That helps. But look at what, and I hate to bring a rain cloud over this, right? But like, look at what happened and when that tragedy happened in Wisconsin with the hate crime that was committed, and Giannis just having a young son brought up the fact that this isn't cool, right? So like I think that stuff like that, it's almost, I hate to say it's like almost taboo to talk about, right? But these are things that's like real life stuff that would factor my decision and where I send my kids to school, let alone where I play basketball, right? So
well, too, Giannis doesn't have to say all these nice things about the city of Milwaukee, though. And he seems to enjoy living there. He has a lot of good. Sorry, he has a lot of good things to say on Instagram and on Twitter about living there and about it being his home, and he seems to like it enough. And he could just sign his contract and not say any of that stuff if he didn't want to. So, no one's holding a gun to his head to get him to say these nice things about the place. So he must be happy there at least a little bit for now. Like we said, he could force his way out in a couple of years, or even if he doesn't at 31, he can still sign a huge contract again.
Yep, and you're 100% right. Are there any more points that you want to discuss on this? I mean, we've given this discussion about 47 minutes, and I felt like I have my notebook here, and like I've touched all my bases that I wanted to cover. Is there anything left that you wanted to touch on, Austin?
There was one more little thing I did want to ask you. Do you think Jrue Holiday coming to Milwaukee is the reason he signed this extension, or how much do you think it has to do with that?
I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, I live somewhere between 1 and 10, like in most everything that we talk about, right? Like I'm rarely ever one of those guys that's like, this is 100% gonna happen, or it has nothing to do with it. Like, I would probably, on a scale of 1 to 10, it probably is in like that 4 to 6 range. It may slightly have nothing to do with it, or it may slightly more so to do with it, right? Like, I think if they would have kept the team that they had, knowing what I know now and how they move forward, I still feel like he probably would have done this. You know what I mean? Like if they would have kept everything the same and kept all their draft picks and still had Eric Bledsoe and George Hill, like I said, the timing is curious, right? Because they just lost the preseason game against Dallas, right? So I don't know. Like, I don't know what else, because they also didn't get the one guy that he reportedly really wanted to get in Bogdan Bogdanovic. So that also kind of tips me probably more so to that 4 to 5 range that, like, I don't know, maybe a little bit, but I don't think it was like the biggest reason why he did. I mean, like you said, the biggest contract in the NBA, like I think that probably has more so to do with it than Jrue Holiday.
I tend to agree. I think he would have stayed either way. I just felt like he would. I kind of spoke against it more than once. I've been on record saying that I didn't think he should, but
yes, what we think he should and what he end up would doing obviously are not the same things. I think that, we mentioned it with Shannon Walsh on our show that like we felt that he should wait it out. Like there was no reason for him to be tied down to this team long term. But that's not to say that, he would or, 100% would or would not. It's just what we would think based off of what we knew at the time, right?
Right, definitely. And I'm not afraid to admit it. A little bit of my motivations are definitely selfish. I kind of like seeing players move around. It's more fun to talk about. I think Shannon posted a tweet that said, it showed him signing the announcement that he was signing, and it said, well, this is boring. And, I definitely agree with that for sure. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So it makes for better television. It makes for better radio. It makes for better breaking news podcasts like this one, if we can speculate about all those things. And the nice thing is, anymore with what we've seen in the NBA with the way contracts are and the way, big time star players are. This doesn't necessarily mean that we can't speculate about where he's going to be in a couple of years, because he could, like you said all along, this could be a 2-year kind of thing and he's out. It could be 4, it could be 5, it could be the rest of his career. But, the nice thing is we can always talk about that and, ad nauseum, basically.
Yep. And what this did do was something that he mentioned that he didn't want to happen was, him being asked about it all year long, or his teammates being asked about it all year long. Now that's gone. You can't ask if he wants to be traded or wants out, at least until we start seeing the end of the season, or kind of like what the team is looking like come, May, June, July. Right. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think that we touch on literally every sort of angle that you would ever want to touch on, for a logical NBA show here. Austin, appreciate you taking time out of your birthday, man, just to come on and do this break-in.
Gift to get to be able to talk about basketball.
Well, happy birthday. So
thank you.
Oh, and I did get one more surprise for you for your Christmas stuff that I got for you that I'm not going to tell you about. So don't ask me or try to twist my arm and get it out of me, but
I'll be good.
All right. Well, good deal. Anything you want to tell the fine folks, the listeners, before we head out of here?
Always check out offtheballnetwork.com for anything you need sports wise. We've got some kind of fun ideas in the works. So that's all. I'll leave you with a little tease. I won't tell anybody what it is. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you listening in, and everybody else, Lee, everybody who listened, or who messaged in or whatever. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us. But this was definitely a lot of fun.
Yep. And Barb too. Last name is hyphenated Carr. I'm assuming that's
that's my mama.
Your mama. All right. Well, your mom, give her a shout out here on your birthday too, because she wrote in.
Mom. She did write in. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Mom. Appreciate you watching. But yeah, Austin, just thank you so much, man. Happy birthday, man. I'll be your age here in March. So you're the old guy now.
Yep. I'm the gray beard.
Yep, there you go. The old gray beard. But yeah.
You in there. There's a few.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you everybody who watched and listened.
Thanks for having me, like always.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks to everybody who watched, who listened, who kind of went back and forth with us. I'm sure we're going to talk about this more. As for us, you can follow us on BTG NBA Pod on Twitter, on Instagram. You can follow Austin at Austin Carr. Is it 10 or 30? 10. 34 is your email. So so Austin Carr 10 on Twitter.
My email now too.
Yep, there you go. You can follow me on Twitter at StephenBTG. BTG's for breaking the game. Listen to us on Dash Radio on the Nothing But Net channel every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. That's drive time, which Austin and I are super excited about.
Yes, we are.
And, our next show will be on there on Friday, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Giannis on there. We got a lot of our thoughts out there now, so
right.
We'll touch on that. We're going to touch on a rookie report, and we're going to touch on preseason standouts as well. So
who's looked great in the preseason so far, and what we think of some of the big name rookies and their performances. So it should be exciting.
And even some of the not so big name rookies, right? So we're going to have a little bit of everything on there. But Austin, man, appreciate you. Go celebrate your birthday. Love on your family, man. We'll talk to y'all later. Much love, everybody.
Have a good one.